Hey, welcome to your day off. I'm your host Corey, and today I'm actually talking to a pretty good friend of mine, someone that I met. Oh, geez, man, I guess like at the very beginning of the podcast, I would guess like 8 years ago or so. He was honestly just kind of instrumental in us having a relationship with the Ruzel brand, and he's also the one that directly or indirectly introduced us to Rob and Lane, the founders of Ruzel. I highly recommend if you want a good laugh, that you go into like it was 2018, so it was our first year doing the podcast. But I highly recommend you kind of go back and listen to that thing. It was honestly one of the best and funniest podcasts we've ever done. Actually, a little side note to that, like on we recorded it on Saturday, I believe, maybe it was Sunday, doesn't matter. But I woke up the next morning and like my ribs were hurting so bad and I couldn't figure out what was happening. Like it felt like I was doing like sit-ups all night or something. And then I realized that it was literally because we laughed so hard with Rob and Lane. It was a very cool podcast, and just like for a little bit of our podcast history, what was really interesting is it kind of showed us that we could do the podcast a little different. We could have fun with it. We didn't have to be all like broadcasty and serious. I think if you listen to the ones before that podcast, we had a bunch of like set questions and that kind of stuff. With after that podcast, we just realized that we could have fun with this. We could have real conversations with this. We could make fun of each other on the podcast, and it was just a lot of fun. It was a huge learn for us. It was one of those. I guess I don't know, the milestones in the sense that like it changed the podcast because we learned how it could be done as well. We've I don't know what to say from there, but it was just a really cool learning experience. So, anyways, today my guest is David Brockhoeft. I've known him for years through his cheeseburger phase, and we're going to kind of get into that. Which, by the way, I think is like one of the funniest and coolest monikers ever, cheeseburger. And I referred to him as cheeseburger for years, but he's got a little story to tell about cheeseburger. He's got a little story to tell about Ruzel, and just about a lot of stuff that he's been up to. On a personal note, Dave was my barber for a couple years, a few years, and it was always fun to kind of make an appointment with him and get to hang out with him in his barbershop locally here. But he is a national educator for Ruzel. He was then. That's how I met him, or that's how I met the boys, and then he still is. So, but he's had a lot of transition in his life in the last couple of years, and I'm honestly honored just to kind of be able to chat with him about what he's been up to the last couple of years, and kind of get to break it down a little bit. So, on that, Mr. David Brockhoeft, welcome to your day off.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
So,
Go ahead.
yeah, man, what's been going on with you?
I mean, that should be my question to you because I haven't seen you here in at least a couple of years, man. And like,
Yeah,
you used to be all coiffed and look good, and now you look friggin' homeless. Your long hair and
yeah. It's a phase. It's a phase. Yeah, I'm growing it out. Been growing it out for the last year. We're going to do a big photo shoot in the next week and transfer me into a bunch of different looks for Ruzel with Rob and David Recugula up in Denver. So there'll be some fun photos coming out pretty soon. But it's not like I'm having a midlife crisis or anything. There is a purpose behind all of it. So I'm
well, the
looking
purpose
forward to
was the
seeing my
midlife crisis.
face again and sleeping peacefully without hair all in my face.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And if you're listening in, by the way, when we talk about Rob is the Bloody Butcher, which I always find as the funniest like Instagram handle ever, only because he's a vegan. So the Bloody Butcher is like I don't know.
Yeah, the story of that came when he did his first shave and he cut the guy, and the guy got up and yelled, "He's not a barber, you're just a bloody butcher." So that's where it came from. I don't know if you knew that story or not, but yeah, we all have our trials and tribulation of learning a craft and starting off from the bottom to get to the tops of our fields, and it takes a long time and a lot of dedication to do so. And Rob's a perfect example of that. He still always keeps striving to be better and do the next greatest thing, and that's really what makes him such a creator in our industry.
Yeah, I love watching him. He is definitely a just way interesting and to your point, like you can always see that he's always pushing, always pushing. You know, it's funny with the Bloody Butcher story. Tony, he was once cutting this. this Funny enough, the guy's name was Tony as well. But Tony was cutting his hair, and the client Tony said, "Have you ever cut anyone's ear?" And before Tony could say no, he snipped the top of the guy's ear off, and it bled
Yeah.
and it bled like hell. So I think that's called a Freudian slip, but that one was a little bit
Yeah, yeah. Premonition.
exactly. So David, I know that you worked here for a while, like in the DMV here in Frederick, Maryland. But where are you from originally?
Originally, I'm a Gulf Coast kid. I grew up on the Gulf Coast of Texas, right at the Louisiana-Texas Causeway off of Lake Sabine. So we were pretty south. If you went further south, you just got wet. So we were right there on the water. So everything above us is north. So
That
yeah, I was in a town called Nederland, or Nederland is what we always said it, but it's the word Dutch. And the crazy thing is my town that I grew up in was founded by people from Rotterdam, from the Netherlands. And they came over and were kind of bamboozled with some land that they bought sight unseen and told it was for something more flourish for farming and everything, but it's really a bunch of wetland and shoreline. So the coincidence of being in a town from Rotterdam and now working with people in Rotterdam and going to Rotterdam myself, it's just kind of mind blowing how the universe just has a weird way of working.
that's amazing. How did you end up in like the Mid Atlantic area?
In '93, I moved to Bethesda from Houston. So a guy named David Cohen, and he was pretty much created the hair scene in Bethesda, in Rockville, in the outside of DC area. He's pretty much almost everybody down there that owns a successful shop worked for him at some point. He did like 50 years behind a chair. It's
Wow,
pretty amazing individual, and he offered me a job in '93, and I just decided in 2 weeks to just pack up. I never even checked out the salon. I just got on a plane, put my stuff in storage, flew out, and figured that if it didn't work out, I could always go back to where I was at. And my mom thought I'd lost my mind. It's just an impulse. Our conversation just really influenced me, and at the time, I just felt like I needed a change,
right.
and just so I just took a risk, which is pretty common in my life. I do things spontaneously, and it worked out for the better. I feel like I think that David actually taught me how to be a hairstylist in a commercial environment. He taught me how to make money in the business. Before that, I'd studied a lot with Tony and Guy when they came into Carrollton, Texas, outside of Dallas in the late 80s. And that's where most of my training came from. But my hair training came from Tony and Guy, but my business training came from David Cohen.
That's right. And David, what that was David's Beautiful People.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And when I went to his retirement, it was pretty amazing when you're looking around the room and you're looking at all these really successful people in the area,
Uh-huh.
thinking that they all started working for him at some point. It really made you realize one person's influence on a whole area. It
That's
was it
cool.
was pretty incredible. I think he was overwhelmed with it himself. It finally hit him. I don't think he'd even realized it.
That's amazing. Let me ask you this though: were you on Woodmont Avenue?
At first, he had two locations, Woodmont, and he had the one over there on Rockville Pike.
Uh-huh.
And Richard Milstein was managing the Woodmont location. And we went back and forth at first, but I mostly worked at the Rockville Pike location. Then there was a guy named Reg, he owned PR Partners, and he ended up buying the second
That's
location
where I
on
started,
Woodmont.
right?
Oh, is it?
In Bethesda. Yeah,
But
yeah, that's why I was asking. So I was working with Reg, and that's kind of where it wasn't my first salon, but it was the first one that like was the real salon. You know what I mean? Like that I wasn't like knew I wasn't bouncing out of, because he had more like career based type stuff. So yeah, when Reggie bought that salon, I was hired shortly thereafter. And actually, Tony worked at David's Beautiful People before Reggie bought it. And then Tony was like an assistant with Richard. And then Reggie bought it, and they stayed with Reg while everybody else kind of like spread out a little bit.
Yeah, it was an interesting time period because Reg at the time had offered for me to stay there or come over there. And I really I didn't work over there very often. I just went over there occasionally. And um, I just didn't feel right. I really had an allegiance to David. David was kind of like my father in the hair industry, I would say.
Right.
He gave me a lot of guidance and we had a lot of fun working together, but he also, he kind of knew how to control me at the time, and I was a little out of control at the time period. Originally, there was two ladies I worked for in Houston at Hallelujah Hair, and Dax Deschamps that's working for Hanzo now. It was his mom that I originally worked with in Houston, and he was just a little kid, and I remember dunking his head in the swimming pool for squirting me with a squirt gun at a pool party one night. But they were really patient with me because you come out, you're 18 to 20 something years old. I mean, you go to Houston for the first time in your life, you're running around crazy. I had a condo right across the street from the salon. They would send a shampoo girl over to make sure I was gonna be up in time to be at work at a certain time.
Yeah.
I've been really fortunate to have really patient and real people in my career that has really influenced me and made a difference in my life. So really appreciate that. Glynis Tullany, that was another one. She's a Scottish lady.
Uh-huh.
Uh, both of those ladies were awesome to me, and that was my first 5 years of hair I spent with them. Uh, they gave me a what do you call it? A good basics of ground to go off of, and I've always come back and visited them. I still talk to them not daily, but regularly now, 39 years later. It's pretty awesome that we still communicate and stay in touch.
So how did so your story confuses me a little bit. Like I've always known you as as a barber, and certainly like when Ruzo first came. There's a video that the guys from Russo did a few, I guess 2015, 2014 or so. And it's a really cool video of them, doing hair and doing like, classic looks like, classic pompadours and stuff. And kind of like when I first met you, that yes, you were working for Russo, but also you were kind of doing those looks. So how did you transition from, you know, being a hairstylist and then moving into the barber world?
Well, when I started in hair, it was departmentalized.
Okay.
You were a cutter or a colorist, and I've always been a cutter by nature. Um, you would come in, you'd get your hair cut. We would go through the collection. We'd find the appropriate look for you. I'd cut the hair. I'd take you over to a colorist. We explain the flow of the haircut. The colorist would then tailor the color to the haircut. And then you would send back to me. I would blow dry you out afterwards and then do all the finish cutting, the texturizing, and then you would leave. So it was a whole process. Uh, so I love cutting hair. And then I just got to where I felt like in hairdressing, the haircut got lost after a time period. It's just all about color. Everything just became about color and still kind of is that way. And when you really, all those like early 90s and mid 90s Tony and Guy haircuts and asymmetricals and all that shattering out and Rusk bringing out all his texture shears and all that time period where cutting was just so strong. It just kind of got pushed to the wayside with color at that time period. And that's just not my game after a while. I mean, I did it and I participated in it for a while, but I've always really enjoyed precision cutting. And when I couldn't do cutting, I felt like anymore with hairstyling, I just started transferring over to more male specific, where these technical classic haircuts that require skill set, and because there's not a lot of room for error in with men's hair. People take it for granted. They think that you just put guards on, do this and that, but it's a lot more to it. There's a lot of growth patterns you have to deal with, and it really teaches you head shape and really cutting in general. If you understand head shape, then you understand cutting.
I
So that
but I don't think that people underestimate men's hair cutting in that sense, just because there's so many people, certainly in my career, that refuse to do men's haircut, and it wasn't for any other reason other than not having that skill set or intimidated by that skill set. So, anyways, that's pretty cool. And by the way, I totally get that. I totally get that barbering became I was once listened to an interview with Darius Rucker when he first did his first country record, and they were saying like, how do you think you're doing country music or whatever it was, and he goes, you know what, this is really the only genre left that's like singer songwriter, and I kind of think that way, kind of about barbering, like it's the genre that's available now that's truly about hair cutting. However, I mean, even look at what other people are doing now. Color is taking over barbering as well. We're seeing a lot of different color.
yeah, it's always going to evolve. I mean, I've been doing this 39 years this February, and I'm almost 40 years behind the chair. I've seen it come and go and circle back at this point. This whole wolf cuts and all this stuff, where it's just like classic Bordeaux's that we used to do in Tony and Guy stuff. And you see it circle around, and it's changed here and there, and there's differences, but it's all really, there's not a whole lot of different things you can do with hair. You can square layer it, round layer it, long layer it, uh, bob it, long layers. I mean, it all has to be repeated and recycled. And when you've been doing it for almost 40 years, you see these recycled things, but there's little nuances that make them different. So I think it's going to constantly keep circling in a 20, 30-year circle, because that's what we do. We draw from our subconscious mind. I mean, when you're a kid, you only know what you see growing up. And then when you start doing things, when you're trying to change stuff, you're just pulling from your subconscious what you've collected over time. And that's why things start evolving in these 20, 30-year circles, because people are just drawing from what they've seen throughout their life.
I
And
read.
yeah,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
I
And
read a book.
styles, uh,
You go, Dave.
and
You're the guest
style
here. You go.
and style always comes from the youth. I mean, that's why it's so important to have youth in your salons or your barber shop, because the youth is what changes everything. I mean, other than that, us old guys, we just get stuck. If we didn't have the youth influencing us and showing us what they think is the future, we would just be doing the same thing on repeat all the time.
Yeah, fair enough. And there's certainly been times in my career where I felt like I'm on repeat all the time. So
Yeah.
that's really
It
nice.
takes that young, eager person that comes in that doesn't know how to do everything, that's figuring out to to create different new techniques that you can steal. I mean, come on.
That's what it's about, man.
I
That's
mean, you're like, hey, that didn't really work, but it could work. We just need to change this and that, and then you can show them how to fix it, and then they've just taught you a new thing for yourself. And that's how I've always grown, is like everybody can learn something from each other. Like you can't know everything, and you never will know everything. It's just, you just got to take what you can steal along the way and just keep gunny sacking all your little nuggets of knowledge.
that's it, man. And it's not stealing.
Yeah,
It's just that's the evolution of it,
it
man.
is stealing. You didn't create it, but you're gonna use it for your advantage.
Yeah, but
That's
if
a
your
better
name's not
point.
Vidal Sassoon, you didn't create anything. Let's be clear.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You
But
know?
I love it. I mean, that's what keeps me going. And otherwise, I'd have burned out a long time ago. And I have burned out two or three times. Everybody does. It's impossible to do any job for 40 years and not feel like you've burned out at some point.
When you feel like you've burned out, what do you do?
Uh, I try to go into I try to find my weaknesses. And then whenever I find something I'm weak at and start focusing on getting better at it, it takes away the focus on just doing all the stuff I'm good at all the time. So when you constantly just circle around on specialize on what you're good at, you you get you you draw consistency, which makes you money and makes you successful in your business. But then sometimes that'll kill your creativity. So you have to work on your weaknesses and find things like a haircut that you don't do well and try to master that haircut. Like let's say I'm a classic traditional barber and you see all these like burst fades and like when I was in New Mexico, you're doing the Edgars and a lot of haircuts that I really don't personally enjoy, but they're different and I had to figure them out and get good at them, you know? So those are the things that just round you out more, doing things that you don't do on the norm.
Mm. I've also found that like sometimes when I'm feeling burnt out, it's not necessarily, or it's not exclusively to behind the chair. Like
Oh
sometimes,
yeah, yeah.
like sometimes, like if I'm feeling burned out, sometimes it might just be I'm feeling burned out in life, and if I can kind of challenge myself to do something different, just in regular life, not necessarily behind the chair, that also seems to remotivate and re-energize. I mean, it's probably why one of the reasons why I started the podcast. You know, just looking for something else
Right, right.
to learn about.
Yeah, man. It's like everything that we do outside of our chair reflects back onto what we do behind the chair. That's why it's important to have such a balance of living and work. Because if you just work all the time, I've been there. If you're just putting in 80-hour work weeks, being an owner and working behind a chair, of course you're going to burn out. It's finding that balance and doing things for yourself to make yourself happy. All of it projects into the big picture of succeeding in life. It's not just about your chair. I mean, you can be successful behind your chair all you want and be miserable when you're at home or away from it. You know, you could be miserable being successful behind your chair because you have no balance in everything else in life. Like your podcast is your passion, really. It's what you do to feel and have a passion for in life that feeds you to go back behind your chair.
Yeah, no, no, no. That
Yeah.
that's definitely a truth. This year I'm using the word balance less because balance to me, my mind's eye, it's like a scale. Like everything is
Mhm.
even, and I've never been able to like get those scales even. Like work takes over a lot, or just time away. The word I'm looking for is harmony, and that's being okay with it being off kiltered and not fight for perfect quote unquote balance.
Yeah, yeah. We all have our own paths in life. I mean, your path's going to be different than mine, but our paths are going to be based on what drives us. And success is always a misconception because people put a dollar sign on it. That doesn't always mean just because it's monetary doesn't mean that you're successful with yourself. Success is finding that place in life where everything works for you and you're content and you like who you are, you like where you're going, you're comfortable in being yourself. All that to me is success. It's not just about a dollar sign or what the world sees from an outside view. It's how you perceive your life. And you can be successful and not be a millionaire. You can be a millionaire and not be really successful in life. I mean, just because you have money doesn't make you happy, and just because you don't doesn't make you sad, you know? So finding what works for you and being true to yourself, I think is as you get older, you start realizing all these things that you put on this priority for the world. It's just a front for the world. That's why I had to kill the cheeseburger thing. That was like, I mean, cheeseburger actually came from a mountain bike nickname from a stupid incident that happened with a drunk girl and a cheeseburger one night. And then my Instagram initially was about mountain biking, if it went way back. And then it turned into business type for hair, but I never changed the name. And then this cheeseburger Eddie starts, you start putting out what people like. You get validation. And then you're like, oh, they like that. So it makes you create more of it. And you create more and more. And then you find that you're just doing things to get validation from the world and not validating yourself through it. So after a while, this avatar that you created on social media just takes over your life. And everywhere you go, you're being called by your social media handle. It's not even your real name. It's like a wrestler, like The Rock.
Right.
You know, I mean,
He's not okay with that one there, Dave.
yeah, you know, it's like, but you end up becoming, it starts consuming you, and then you just, the world wants to see cheeseburger, and then David gets kind of pushed further and further in the back seat until one day this cheeseburger is taking over your reality. It's came from off the screen, off your phone, and you're living the life of cheeseburger. You're not being yourself anymore. And I had this big epiphany one day, and Jim Carrey talked about this thing of depression and sadness, and it really resonated with me and made me realize that I've created this false avatar of myself because this is what I felt like the world really wants. And I'm doing all this stuff because this is what the world wants. And it's not really what I wanted at all. So I had to kill it. And I took some time off, you know, and went through some personal crisis. And then I just one day packed up my truck, took my dirt bikes and my dog of 15 years, and I headed to New Mexico and just a whole new path, you know, trying to kill cheeseburger, leave it all behind, and go rediscover myself again. And
So
it it took
I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah, and it took getting away from everything. And the desert has this weird way of opening you up and spending lots of time by myself again and getting to like myself again.
Well,
Uh,
first off,
it just all, I'm sorry,
I
it
love the
just
mountain.
all comes to surface. And then this book came about because I just started journaling my thoughts and what I was going through. And then, you know, I didn't go out to the desert with the intention of writing a book. It just kind of happened because I was just trying to rebuild a business that really wasn't working where I was at. I was doing different alternative things to try to occupy my time and thought process. And I think that it was it was a win and a failure together because the failure created the win, you know, because I tried something different. I went out and part of it drew better things out of me that were successful, but in the hair part of it, I really wasn't successful out there. So that brought me full circle back to where I'm at now here in Greenville at Old Crow, and I'm with a group of guys that I've worked with over time for 10 years that I just love being with, and now I feel like I'm ready to get back to what I'm doing or what I do, and be proud about just being myself and doing it. Not trying to be an avatar, not trying to be cheeseburger, not trying to be like this, like Instagram famous barber, this and that. You know, all that stuff starts consuming you and takes over. And now I'm just trying to be myself. I cut hair. I make my living doing it. I found more of that peace within my own success of life and just being myself.
I think there's a lot of people certainly that I think it's a journey, right? It's a journey from, like when you first get recognized on a social media platform or on Instagram in this case, and then and then just kind of finding that it's it the value changes, why you do it. I think it's exciting and stuff. So I want to get into the book. So it's called Life Beyond the Chair. You can get it if you're listening in, you can get it on Amazon. Reading through the book, there's a lot on there, and I guess we've kind of been talking about it anyways, but there's a lot on it about like change and becoming comfortable with change and those kind of things. And honestly, I think I'm very much there in my life, like I'm very much like some of it might be legacy, some of it might be midlife crisis. I don't know what it is. Although we're way past midlife, David.
Yeah, I hear
But,
that.
but however,
56 this month.
same. I think we had the same birthday,
Yeah.
don't we? When's your birthday?
Yeah, 26.
Oh, I'm the 24th. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm 2 days older than you. Older than
Yeah.
you, sir.
Older brother.
Exactly. But I certainly feel that. And again, I don't know if it's legacy or what it is. Or I think I'm just getting really comfortable with always changing. I think that's kind of where I'm at in life is like, yeah, change is inevitable and we let's just stop fighting it. I've always believed, or certainly recently I believe that, change is never about what's next. It's about like killing belief systems. And it seems to me that certainly that cheeseburger persona was a belief system that you had to journey through.
Yeah, yeah, it's you know, to be honest with you, I think the biggest change thing that caused my change was uh on June 20th in 2018 was when I just decided that I was done drinking and partying, you know. Um, I think the clarity of sobriety really influenced all this change in my life. I think I'd just been on repeat for so many years and created a lifestyle that was functional. I was functional with it. I wasn't like a dysfunctional drunk or dysfunctional addict. I made it through. I went to work every day. I did everything, but uh, the numbing and hiding the feelings through alcohol and drugs and was just became a lifestyle. It doesn't even mean that I enjoyed it anymore. It just was my way of coping and dealing with the fact that I wasn't satisfied with myself. And then when Cheeseburger came along, he was a partying kind of fun rock star guy, and that was just I think that was a last cry for help, to be honest with you. And one day I just woke up and I just said, I'm done with this. I can't do this any longer. And uh, I haven't changed since that day, like with that mindset. I've been sober ever since. I think it was something you just had to decide to do because underlining alcoholism and drug addiction, that's what we do to cope with our problem. But the problem lies with something else. I mean, we have to address what our real problem is so we can stop drinking and stop partying because the partying's not the problem. The problem's what we do. I mean, the partying's what we do to hide the problem. So once I faced my real problems, that's when things started getting better for me.
I understand that, and it's actually funny. I mean, I'd have to do the math, but I was 29 when I stopped drinking, and it was literally like I was like 34, 35, so it was like 5 or 6 years later where life started to become very clear to me, and my participation in life started to become clear. It was almost like I had to like reinvent or recalculate who I was, and it took me in 4 to 5 years, maybe 6 years to do it. And it sounds like you're kind of on the same timeline as well. It took you like 4 or 5 years to be like, okay, now I'm starting to understand who I
Well,
am.
once you get that clarity, things start surfacing and you have to learn to feel things again and have emotion and you cry randomly about weird stuff and things start happening and your feeling comes back and then it changes your perspective of things. And then also all your friends go away. I mean, all these people that were your associated friends that you partied with, they have nothing to do with you anymore. And then the few true friends that you've had throughout life that have always been there for you, that's where you find is the glue that holds you together. It's just a few. It doesn't have to be many. In my book, I talk about a life triangle. And in the life triangle, it says you have to have three people in your life. And one is a work mentor that can help guide you professionally and coach you throughout your career. The next is a best friend that's honest with you. They'll give you an honest opinion and tell you when you're wrong and disagree with you and just be there for you. And the third is a life partner that actually supplies the intimacy and love that you need. And you in return have to do the same for them. And if you have those three things covered in life, if you and then you can pretty much move forward because you have your work and your friendship and your partner all taken care of. And you don't need a whole lot more than that. But in the book, I tell you to when you decide on these people in your life to call them up personally and ask them to be this person for you. And it's a different concept because you're actually saying you need help at this point. And that's what we strive or we hide from the fact that we all need help. And I mean, we've needed help since the day we were born. You had to have somebody feed you. You had to have somebody change you when you were a baby. You had to go through all these things. You've always had help, but you get to this point where you think you can do everything on your own, and you can't. I mean, and it's not a bad thing to ask for help, but when you call these people and ask them personally to be this person in your life, it creates a bond for you, and they understand when you talk to them that they need to be this person for you. So I think that's made a big difference. And my friend Ricky, he's been this person for me as a friend. And the thing is, I got to listen to Ricky when he disagrees with me. I can't just blow him off because he disagreed with me. I have to value what he's telling me, or it's not worth talking to him about. The same with my work mentor is Lawrence, and I have two of them. Lawrence and Carrie agreed both to be my work mentors, and they have their own different values to them. But when I have questions or problems with work, I can professionally I can text them or call them, and they're always willing to talk to me about it. And it's very helpful, and it's been actually a big thing that's helped me change. And
Mm.
then I have my partner that gives me true intimacy, which is not sex. It's just somebody that's there with you through all your failures and your faults and just loves you for who you are, not who you were or who you can be. It's just the person that you are. And a lot of people argue that the best friend and the life partner can be the same, but they can't really because you can't tell your best friend everything that you could tell your life partner, and you can't tell your life partner everything you need to tell your best friend. So you need to have those three things, I think, in order to really evolve and change.
I listen, that's an amazing tool there. I just that is really, really smart. And I also like how like you took it to the next level and you asked them to be those people, you know? I mean, what would have they said if they said no though? Then what?
Well, that actually sets the line in the sand,
Okay.
because when you're physically asking somebody for help,
Hmm.
they're either going to you got a 50-50 shot. They're going to say no or yes. I mean, but if they say yes, then they feel they have this obligation to help you.
Sure.
But if they say no, I can't be that person for you, then you have to search out and find an appropriate person that can be that person for you. You
And
know?
if they say no, they weren't the right person anyway. So there's nothing to really like,
Right, right.
you know.
And they can't receive any compensation for it because a true mentor in life never does it for compensation. They do it because they love watching you grow and become somebody better.
Yeah.
You
No,
know.
for sure. That's really good. That goes back to my belief of gifting, not with the idea of investment. In simpler terms, like if you hold the door open for someone and you're expecting a thank you, then you never open the door. It's a gift. You always did it as an investment, even if that investment is a thank you. So, it kind of leads into that or lends into that. Dude, that's really amazing. I love that. I love that tool. What other
Yeah.
what other kind of stuff do you write about in that kind of like same, I mean, not necessarily that, but throughout the book. And the book's interesting because it seems like you were writing it when there was life change. It wasn't like there's not like perspective of like, oh well 10 years ago when I changed, let me write about that. Like, like one of the most interesting books that was ever written is Malcolm X's autobiography. And the reason that I find it interesting is because a life change happens in the middle of the book. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
I,
exactly. That exactly happened to me with this book. Every morning I woke up and I dedicated an hour and a half to writing this book without rereading it, So the if you start the book, at first I tried to make it more industry related. So it goes through about 3 chapters that applies to working behind the chair, and then it just kicks into overdrive about, wow, who the fuck am I? Uh, where is this going? And because that's just what happened to me. I didn't reread it. I just wrote it from beginning to end, and then I figured I'd go in and edit it and then maybe have to rearrange chapters as it went through
Mhm.
just to get it done. But I didn't do that at all. I mean, we edited uh, grammatical mistakes, but I left it just as I wrote it. And it really was me just changing and shifting and figuring out a lot of things. And one of the biggest things I figured out during this whole process is I'm the problem. I mean, nobody's done any of this stuff to me in life. It's just all me. I mean, I'm my biggest enemy in life. I mean, I could play the blame game, but nobody ever does anything to you that you didn't allow them to do. So once you realize that you've allowed all this stuff to go on and you permitted it in your life and you made these choices and stuff, and then you can quit blaming the world and people and relationships and all the stuff that really isn't true. The problem is you. I mean, you have to make these changes and only you can do it. And it's what you allow other people to do to you is your own mistakes. I mean,
it also
you
comes down
have
to
the ability.
perspective too, right? I mean, it comes down to it's not just what you let them do, but it's like it's the perspective that you have about what they've done. I think that I think that it's easier for me to like kind of let that go. About when I felt wronged, is just to change my perspective on that, and and not give that any energy.
Yeah, it's just easier to point blame at somebody or something else that caused it instead of looking at your own reflection. See, I say that inside of us, like we have this big thing now, it's all about bullying with kids and everything, but the biggest bully in life is the bully inside you. You have this bully that tells you, oh, you can't do that. You're not good enough. And people let that internal bully boss them around because it creates what do you call it? You lose faith in yourself through instead of studying your failure and figuring out what happened to make it go wrong, you just think, oh, I'm never gonna get it, or this is never gonna happen. And you give up. And that's what the bully wants you to do. He wants to keep you down in there. And you gotta push past that guy and listen to the guy you see in the mirror every day that's trying to make you into that better person. Because when you look at yourself in your own reflection, you know who you are and you know what you're hiding. Everybody has their internal selves. We all hide within the external part. We know what we don't put out there. We know what we do put out there and all this stuff. But see, if you listen to that voice that's telling you what you should do all the time, instead of ignoring it, then you'll start living a happier life. We all have this voice that tells us what we should be doing. We should be working out while you're sitting there, eating Doritos, or I should be cleaning out the garage today, or I should be doing this and that. And you know what I mean? But you tend to blow off that voice that's guiding you into things that are more positive to you just by the sake of listening to that internal bully that's saying, "No, you don't have to do that. You don't need to do that. You're content the way you are. You don't need to lose that 10 to 15 pounds. Just keep putting on weight. You're happy. You're comfortable. It's like this comfort culture that we get into that that takes over because we live in this good enough world and this good enough society that where good enough is the norm, if and that's fine if that's really what you want. But I mean, I've never been a good enough person. I'm a very competitive person by nature, and my worst competitor is myself. I compete against myself, and I beat myself down a lot. And we all go through these lows like that, and it's because we start listening to that internal bully, and you just got to put him aside and just push your way through and find yourself in the process and just say, I can do this. It's just going to take longer. You know, I might have to take baby steps to get there, but each step is going to take me one step closer to achieving it. So it's like working out. You start off somewhere. You don't run a marathon by just getting out of your house on the first day and you run. You got to go run a mile, then you got to run 2 miles, then you
No,
got to build up to it
no, for
and
sure.
not be afraid to fail. Like when you were a baby, you wanted to walk. So you just tried to walk and you just kept falling down and crashing into things, but you didn't have this fear of failure then because all you had was a desire to walk. So it took you about a year or more to figure it out, to get that balance, to learn how to walk. Then you learned how to run. And it was a time process. It didn't just happen overnight. But the difference was when you're a baby, you don't fear failure. You just keep trying and trying because you don't know failure yet. You just are moving forward. But then in life, we're taught like failure is this horrible thing, but it's really not. It's just what teaches us what we did wrong.
Yeah.
So if we really study the failure, then we understand what not to do again. But when we keep repeating that failure over and over again, we let it beat us down because we're
I
not taking,
to go into the baby analogy, I think that a baby's not connected to failure.
yeah,
At some time in life, like we become connected to failure. We become connected to not being able to do. It probably starts at about, I don't know, 6 or 7 years old or something. But up until then, there's just no like emotional connection to failure. You just keep moving. You just keep
right.
doing.
When a kid fails at something, he just wants to try it again. He's excited to try it again. Let me try it again. Let me try it again. And then they keep trying until they figure it out. But
That's
like
why,
when an
that's why we
adult
had
does
BMX
it,
bikes when we were kids, man. We just kept making the jump bigger.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And just carnage. That's why broken bones. It's just like the evolution. I started riding dirt bikes when I was like 5 years old. I got my first Honda Trail 50. 55 years later, it's the longest running thing in my life. You
You still
know?
have that bike?
Yeah, like I started on a Honda Mini Trail 50 when I was 5 years old, and now I'm 56, and it's still my greatest escape in life is a motorcycle,
Got it, got it,
you
got it.
know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So motorcycles and hair are the two longest running things that I've ever done in life,
Mm.
and that, and I'd say in physical activity. I mean, I've just always have to do some type of exercise or sport or anything to to avoid overthinking and stressing myself out. It's not necessarily for my physical health. It allows me to escape and not stress out, and it's more for mental health, I think.
That's all. Do you do any meditation?
Yeah, every day I do. Every morning at 5 o'clock in the morning, I lay on the floor and I hybrid breathing exercise with my core, but it's all done in slow movement. And I start the first hour of my day just laying on the floor, doing slow movement, core stretching and breathing work. And then the second hour of the day, I move into more what I call physical movements, but I don't really, I use a 20-pound kettlebell. the only weight that I use, but it's all done with body. So I do 2 hours and I listen to very instrumental music on my headphones and I don't get disturbed because I do it before the day wakes up a lot of times. So I apply 2 hours every day to start my day with just breathing, taking care of myself, stretching, getting my body working. And it helps me move into the day. The days I don't do that, my day isn't the same.
How long have you been doing that? How long has that been part of your practice?
Uh, Probably it started off really when I started sobriety because it just gave me something to do.
Mhm.
But I'd say really ritualistically dialing it in to where see the thing is I create these rituals and I talk about that in the book where I just live my day by the clock and by time. Now I have a schedule which makes me not have to think about what's next
Mhm.
and I can go through the day and know and just sort of like how we schedule behind our chair. I schedule my life that way. So if something unexpected happens, like in your chair, you get a mishap on your schedule, you can adapt and work it in, but you know you have a pace of the day. So I would say over the last 4 years, I really have created that 2 hour self time to take care of myself in the morning, just for me not to interact with anybody, but just myself.
I love
I'd
that.
say the last 4 years, I've really dedicated
That's
that time to that.
that's amazing. What believe it or not, we're almost at an hour there, David. Where tell me about the book. Tell me where listeners can pick up the book and all that good stuff.
You can get the book on Amazon. It's volume one. I'm working on volume two. Hopefully, that's going to be out in July because uh, this was written on my transition from losing my business, moving across country, finding myself, and then I had success and failure with that. And this next book will be based off the failure side of that moving again to find it's a quest to find the happiness and balance that you want in life.
Mm.
And so I'll continue with the process. There's probably going to be 3 volumes. I think I'm going to just stop it at three because it'll just be repetitive at that point. But the idea was to write a 3 volume thing, but I didn't understand that my business wasn't going to succeed in New Mexico. I went there to just try to make that my new home.
Mhm.
It was a great place for living, but for work wise, the work wasn't there for me. So it made me realize that at first I'd focused all on my work so much and forgot about myself. And then when I got out there, it was all about living and the work wasn't there. So there has to be that yin yang of balance to the two. You can't be completely satisfied in life without having both successful, you know.
Right.
So I
All right.
went from a workaholic to a playaholic to now finding the balance between the two.
Some kind
Because
of
I was sort of like a kid that had been locked up or a dog that had been in a cage and then you got released. You just wanted to run for a while. So I went out there and I was just riding dirt bikes every single day. I did a whole desert race series. Ruzel sponsored me in the race series. Ended up getting 11th in my division in the race series overall, which wasn't bad for first time racing.
oh, for sure.
And shoot, I quit racing motocross when I was in my early 30s, so it'd been a while and it felt good. And I just actually went back to riding motocross again since I moved out here to South Carolina, which I probably shouldn't be, but I forgot how fun it is to jump dirt bikes. So.
What? You're too old to be jumping dirt bikes, bro.
That's what everybody says, but it still feels good.
That's awesome. No, that's awesome.
Yeah,
So on Amazon, Life Behind the Chair, David Brockhoeft, which is a
yeah.
Brock. Hoeft. That's like that's like the hardest spelling last name ever, by the way.
Yeah,
Look
yeah,
at the video there it is, and you can pick that right up on Amazon. There's a lot of good stuff in the book, man. Like I said, there's a lot of good stuff about change and about grounding and about just being true to yourself and kind of finding yourself as well. So I think
yeah.
it's great. I think it's a great read. I recommend everybody go and give it a look. I think that whether you're in the midst of change or whether change is coming regardless, whether you're in the midst of it at all. So there might be some guidance in here, and I absolutely love the triangle thing. It's almost like an accountability triangle. Like who am I going to be accountable to? And I love that. I might actually pick that up as a practice. But
Yeah.
that's really good, dude. Thanks for hanging out with me. And like
Appreciate it, Corey.
for everybody that's listening in, like I've called David Cheeseburger forever, and now I kind of feel bad. I kind of feel like I'm whatever. But I guess it's back
You
that.
didn't do anything that I didn't allow to be done to me. That's the process. I created Cheeseburger. I became him, and that's the whole process. We hide behind these avatars in life a lot of times, our true selves. And the hardest thing is actually showing the world your true self. And I think the biggest misconception in this book is everybody thought I wrote this book about being in the hair industry for 39 years, and it's really not about that at all. And it's not even really about me. It's just about thoughts of becoming a better person. And the idea is for you to read this book, and you'll be on your own path, and maybe these things can trigger the thoughts to make you think about your own path. It's not really about me at all. It's about you thinking about what you want in life. Yeah.
I love that. I love it's the challenge. All right, Mr. David Brockhoeft with a T.
Yeah,
Thank you
thanks,
for
Corey.
hanging out with me, and thanks for spending time with us and telling us about the book, and just good luck with everything, man. I'm just as a friend, I'm proud of you. I'm proud that you've kind of are on this journey. I think that the journeys are tough, and like I said, where I go to, like it took me like 4 or 5 years to before clarity started to come in. So congratulations for being on that path, and just I'm proud of you, and good luck with Greenville, South Carolina. By the way, I got to get down there. I have a ton of friends down there, so it's definitely
Yeah,
on.
come on down. I got plenty of bikes.
Okay, well, I won't need one. You don't
Yeah, yeah.
want
We'll
them.
go trail riding.
Yeah, that won't
Doesn't
happen.
have to be. Yeah, well, it'll be fun. Come on.
Oh yeah. Okay. David Brockhoff, thank you very, very much for joining us on your day off.